What is up, everybody? Welcome to Comic Book Club. I'm Alex.
I'm Justin.
I'm Pete.
And we are coming to you live from a couple of places on the internet. We're live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Instagram. Maybe you're listening later wherever you get your podcasts. It is all good. And we have a packed show for you tonight. But there is one thing at the top that we need to make room for. Once a month, we say a little thank you. We give a little shout out to anybody who supports us on Patreon at the $5 and up level. We read their names as a thank you for their amazing support. And we're going to kick that off right now by thanking Aaron C. Hollis,
Adam DeRose,
Adam Marks,
Adriel Moreland,
Alana Fontenot.
Ooh, a new one, America's Villain.
Ooh.
Andrew Primo,
Andrew Tillman,
Beercat, PhD,
Bradley Hansen,
Gary Matthews,
Chad Brack,
Christina Jaramillo,
Christina Rensfield,
Chris Terlizzi,
Clemens Luer,
Corey Smoker,
Dan Snow,
Daniel Fuentes,
Daniel Pete the Poodle Cabral.
Love to hear when Pete does that. Rounding out the Danny Black, Danny Heck,
David Donaldson,
Debbie Gloom,
Dennis Scott,
Derek Maynard,
Doug Sodaway,
Dylan LJ,
Eduardo Martinez,
Emmett Quish,
Enrique Chumbas,
Gerard de Villiers,
Ian Rady,
Enid Thomas, wow, like Pete,
Isaac Carter,
Jake Fry,
James Connolly,
Jaron Townsend,
Jason Donahue,
Jeffrey Whaley,
John Henderson,
Jonathan Jong,
Jonathan Too Cool McCool to be forgotten,
Josh, always right,
Joshua Loyo,
Joshua W. Broxson,
Kelby,
Kevin Kleinrock,
Kieran Broderick,
Cody Thomas,
Lance Kaminsky,
Lewana Thomas,
Lucas Inc.,
Maddie,
so nice, had to say Matt Tice,
Matthew C. Hernandez,
Matthew DePalma,
and rounding out the Matthew block, we got Matthew Schofield,
Michael McAuliffe,
Michael Tillman,
Nelson Kelso Martinez,
Nick G.,
Nick Grayson,
and rounding out the official CBC chef Brett Macris block,
Stray
official CBC chef Brett Macris,
Omnia Solart,
Orrin Dix,
Oidis Larson,
Pedro Orangel,
Provocative Ambulance,
Rev Mikey,
Robert Petinato,
Ron Hood,
and my mom, Roxanne Tyler,
and my mom, Sarah Schottmuller. Not actually my mom.
Sarah Schaefer,
Scott Carpenter,
Scott Dewar,
Scott England,
Severin,
Stanley,
Taylor Bryan,
The Big Flood,
the 12 Badge,
Trill Root,
Victor Perez,
Will Buchanan,
Will Diaz,
William Leach,
Zachary Bachman.
Zika's Viral Comics.
Thank you all so much for your incredible support. And I do want to take another moment here. Normally I give a very quick rundown of our Patreon levels, but we actually just refreshed and added a bunch of stuff. So a refresh. So $2 and above, you can still get access to our complete back catalog, thousands of podcasts from 2011 up to 2023. We're going to be updating it at the end of the year, including all of 2024. You can also get access to our Patreon Slack, which is very active and very fun, where people talk about comic books and comic book movies and politics and food and whatever all day long. Very fun stuff. But we have some new stuff as well that you can check out, including a ad-free tier, meaning you can get all of our podcasts completely ad-free, no ads on them. That has been a heavily requested thing for many, many years, and I finally figured out how to do it. So that is
nice
on
job.
one. Oh, thank you so much, Pete. So that is on one of the tiers.
Service.
And the other thing that I'll mention is we have some merch for you guys as well. Merch. So there's stickers, there's t-shirts, there's right now mugs. We're going to switch that out for tote bags at some point. Should be pretty cool. So patreon.com/comic book club. Please check that out. And thank you everybody who supports us, $5 or otherwise. Seriously, the show takes a lot of money, takes a lot of work.
Thank you so much.
We could not keep it going without all of you. So
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
And we got a packed show, as I mentioned, with lots of guests tonight. Later on in the show, Greg Pak and Daniel Kibblesmith are going to be here. But right now, why don't we bring in our first guest? She's the creator of Batman, Wayne Family Adventures, which is on Webtoon and gotten nearly 140 million views, which is a lot of views. Ladies and gentlemen, CRC Payne. Hello, welcome.
Hey,
welcome.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. Now, you have been doing Batman, Wayne Family Adventures with the full name, since 2021. There are 144 episodes right now. It's been collected in print a bunch of times. This is also your first comic, I believe?
Yeah, it's my first one ever.
Wow.
So
Only
cool.
up
They'll
from
all
here.
be like this from here on out. That's great.
Fingers crossed.
How did you hook up this gig? Like, how did this happen? How did you end up snagging this?
Sometimes it was really amazing. I got the chance to submit to this. They already sort of had the idea. They knew they were doing this for the media, and they were going to write this comic about that family and life. And I got the chance to submit a script in, and sort of the only direction I had was like, has to have more than one Bat family member in it. We're looking for something either comedic and silly or heartwarming or both, and sort of slice of life category. And I think I had about a week to turn something in, and I think I wrote 3 scripts in that time because I was so excited.
Yeah.
They all ended up in the comic in one form or another, but the one I ended up turning in was The Last Cookie, which ended up being episode 2 of season 1. And I still can't believe I wrote a comic about Bat family members like beating each other up over a cookie, and now I get to do this for a living.
Well, talk a little bit about your take here. I mean, I know you just touched on it a little bit, but one of the things that I think is really wonderful is it's kind of between missions. Like, there is some detective work. There's certainly a lot of the Batman and Bat family stuff that's going on, but mostly it's the in-between times. So what was it like capturing those characters in these moments?
Yeah, I think one of the things I was really excited about for Wayne Family Adventures was that it was focusing on all of the things that happen sort of off screen, I guess, for a traditional comic book. So focusing more on and the moments between the characters where they just get to be kids or, interacting with Bruce as a dad. So it was really fun to sort of explore these characters more just as people in addition to being superheroes. And then to also think about, you think about all the trouble that you can get up to as a normal person. And then what happens when you've trained, your 10 kids to be, they're all ex-assassins and ninjas, and they have all of these skills that no one else in the world has. And it's like, how much more trouble could you get into if you were those kids? So it's really fun to sort of bring that heightened sense to the comic. And then also bringing a more grounded sense to the characters because they get to just be people sometimes too.
Now, there's a lot of characters and a lot of potential continuity here that maybe you don't want to get entangled with from the rest of the Batman universe. How do you balance that out, or how do you approach it so you can still have the fun with the characters without being like, so the deal with the Signal is...
That was really tricky in the beginning, especially because when we were approaching season 1, we knew we were going to be getting audience members of all levels, right? We were going to be getting diehard Batman fans who know every single thing that's ever happened to Batman. And we were going to get people who didn't really know anything about Batman, maybe even just like that he had family members. So that was definitely a challenging balance to strike when we were starting, because we knew that we needed to give enough info about these characters that people who were just joining us didn't feel like everything was an inside joke. And we needed to also make them feel established enough in canon that people who were fans for years would come over and be like, I still see these characters that I love in these stories. So it was really a lot of just reading on my part. I was already a fan, but just really diving into the comics, figuring out what pieces we were going to bring in, how we were going to bring them in, and when we were going to bring them in. And so I think season 1 was a really good opportunity for us to explore, the very base level of these characters. Who are they? What are their names? Why are they like this? Season 2, we really got to look at the individuals. Where's their heroic drive? Why do they love to do this? What makes them heroes? And now in season 3, we're kind of get to play with it all because we built it all up for our Wayne Family Adventure audience. So it's been great.
Now, my touch point is Lego Batman. Why do these characters have fingers? I'm very mad about this.
That was a big debate among us. We're like, hands, fingers, it's tricky. So,
what are we going to do?
I don't have to draw it. So you know.
Let me start by just complimenting you as someone who reads a lot of Batman and watches a lot of Batman. I really feel like you did such an amazing job of capturing the voice of Bruce Wayne here. Was there certain, like, did you bring stuff from your own family into this? I was really impressed by your voice work. Where did you pull from in life? It's really impressive. Did you have like a really rich standoffish father? Like, I don't want to get too, but
wow, the hard questions from people.
Yeah.
Yes, my dad is secretly a billionaire vigilante.
I knew it.
Very easy to figure this out.
The voice was too good.
It was there. No, but I did pull stuff from real life. Pulled like stories from my childhood or from my parents' childhood, just like stories I heard growing up or things I've experienced, or also just, people watching when you're out and about and just like seeing people do things. I think there's an episode in season 2 where we see Dick as Robin and they're fighting poison ivy and he just like can't stop touching the big red flowery plant because he's a little kid and it's bright and he just likes it. And that was just from out and about with my family, just seeing a little kid. He was, with his parents, they were waiting in line and he was so bored. And there was just like a little chain in between separating the lines and he kept sticking his finger in the chain and then getting it stuck. And his mom would scold him and then he'd just do it again and again and again. He was so bored. So just like stuff like that, where I watch that, I'm like, there's something like, that's funny. I can use this. So just pulled from lots of different places.
One of the things that really struck me while I was reading through it is that we spend a lot of time, like you can imagine, reading mainstream Batman comic books, the DC titles, and he's always put through the ringer. It's always about how can we push this character forward. When you go online and you read a lot of the stuff where people are talking about Batman or they're talking about Robin or they're talking about the family, it really is what you're capturing here in terms of them just hanging out. Like I see a lot of posts on Tumblr, for example, it's just like listing Robins, giving them characteristics, them chatting back and forth. What has it been? Have you heard, I assume, back from fans being like, oh, I wanted to see this. I wanted to see them just doing their thing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think one of the incredible things about Wayne Family Adventures is that this idea was out there for so long. The fans wanted something like this. They wanted interactions like this. And DC and Webtoon heard them. They said, we hear that you want this. We're going to give you exactly that. And so it was really wonderful to be a part of that, to know that there was something out there. I mean, I was a fan before I started writing. This was something that I would have loved to read as a fan. And I truly just feel honored that I get to be the one writing it. But, it's something that I think a lot of people really love about the Bat family, is because they are a family and they see a lot of themselves in that family dynamic and they want to see more of that.
What other family activities are you planning? Do you have a list of like picnic, different things, Disney World? How are you? Probably not that one, but how are you touching on other family trip things or other family?
I'm not quite I don't quite have a checklist that I'm going down. I just kind of, since we have so many characters, I want to make sure that they all get some amount of screen time. And so I sort of start by looking at pairings. I'm like, okay, I want to write an episode about Jason and Cass. And then I'm like, okay, well, those two together are terrifying. So what would they get up to? And then I start thinking about like, what could they possibly do out in the world? And what is the funniest scenario to throw them into? So, and that's where we get different episodes. And then, that particular example was complemented by a comic that was a Batgirls comic that came out where they were talking about how Gotham City insurance rates for skylights were really high because vigilantes kept breaking them to enter into places. And so that sort of sparked the No Doors Allowed episode in season 2, where Jason and Cass are like, we got to teach Duke that you can't go in a front door. Like this is, let's do everything as destructively as possible to enter these buildings. So that was a really fun one to write. So just kind of start with the pairings and work from there.
I wanted to ask you about working with the art team here, because there's a whole bunch of folks that are involved, at least initially. I think it was Maria Lee doing the storyboards, and now it looks like Starbite, who was doing inks at first, is took on a lot of the stuff. How does that back and forth work?
Yeah, so we have the most incredible art team. We have so many people working on this comic behind the scenes, especially since we went from seasons 1 and 2, where we were doing shorter 30-panel episodes, into these longer 60-panel episodes. So we had to bring on a lot more people who have been amazing. And basically, I don't draw, so I turn in a script, and then we go through storyboards from there. And then our art team comes in and they are just layering in, inks, colors, everything, the backgrounds. And I think the best part about working with them is that they're all fans too. So by the time I see the finished episode again, they've all added all these incredible layers and like Easter eggs and all these things, so that it feels fresh to me when I'm going in and I'm reading it and I'm finding things in the background. I think one of the great examples of that was we've been inside Jason's apartment in Gotham a couple times, and I had to keep going back to that episode because I was like, oh wait, there's the tire that he stole, and like here's this other thing that we like referenced, and like that's from the comics, and it was so great to just like find all these little things in the background.
So you do love continuity. I knew it.
Yeah. We got a question here, and I'll frame this up. We generally do cover sort of monthly floppies. We had a bunch of Webtoon people on before, but I always think it's very helpful to bring up stuff like this for our not necessarily native to Webtoon audience. Nat Townsend says, curious why she is using the terminology seasons and episodes. Is that carrying over from Webtoon?
Yes, it is. That was something I had to learn when I started writing for Webtoon. They call, instead of an issue, it's called an episode, and season is what we would call like the collection. So season 1 was our first 50 episodes, I think, is season 1. So that is terminology from Webtoon. Yeah.
Wow. And
sort of like TV.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's exactly like
you've watched.
You've heard of TV, Nat.
You're aware of it. This is something that I ask almost every Webtoon person who comes on here, just because we get very varying answers. But you've had your work translated into a bunch of print editions now, not just the paperbacks, but also you had a Batman Day book, like a floppy book that was distributed on Batman Day, which is super cool.
Yeah.
What were the challenges in terms of taking it from this vertical scrolling format to putting it on the page, on the printed page?
So I was not super involved in that process. Okay. Again, just not being an artist. They were like, we have people who are trained to do this and they will do a good job. And they did an amazing job. But it is challenging to switch from, the vertical format where everything is designed to flow like directly into the next panel, and then figure out how is that going to lay out on the page? Like which panels belong on one page together, which ones belong on the other. When do you need to think about like page breaks? Like how does that influence the story? So it is really challenging. And then just like the backgrounds too, how do those all play into the environment? Is there a particular background that needs to take like precedence on the page versus in your single panel on the screen? So there's a lot to think about. And I was very grateful that they had such wonderful people working on it, because I would not have done as good a job as they did.
Well, it's also a challenge I imagine, with comedy, because you're doing the rhythm of the jokes for this vertical scrolling and with the pause and the break between there. And then it changes it when you suddenly have 5-6 panels on a page.
For sure. And that is one thing that I really love about the vertical scroll format is how much control you have over that punchline. And I think it's such an asset in that sense where, if I'm building up to a very funny visual at the end of the comic, you're not going to see it until I want you to see it. And so it has that like full punch to it. So that is one thing that I really love, especially in writing something that is more comedic, is how much control you have.
I did want to ask you about another project that you're working on, though, which is, again, in the vertical format, though it's not on the Webtoon platform. You're doing Harley Quinn in Paradise, right?
Correct.
For
yeah,
DC Go.
Yeah, it's really fun. It is a romance for Harley Quinn. She's just broken up with the Joker, and she goes on a reality dating TV show where disaster strikes, but she's still got her eye on the prize. She's going to find the next love of her life and come out on top on the show. So it's really fun. It's very silly. Does not take itself too seriously. Harley's such a fun character. I'm really excited to be writing her. And yeah, that's on DC Go, which is the new DC vertical scroll comics. Yeah.
Is there anything different about writing for those platforms? I mean, I know they're both vertical, but other than obviously having different publishers there, is there anything different format-wise from Webtoon to DC Go?
Not really on my end, just in writing the scripts. I mean, it's a very similar process. I can't speak as an artist to what might be different between the two. I'm sure there are some differences, but in my end, no, I've been able to pretty much one-to-one directly translate the skills that I've learned in doing Wayne Family Adventures into Harley Quinn in Paradise.
Awesome.
I was just going to say, very fun premise. Talk about putting Harley in a situation where you can just bang on some great jokes. It's so fun.
Oh, yeah. She's such a great character. I have so much fun with her. I feel like she is, she's a character where it's like almost nothing she says could be surprising because she's just someone who's just like so much larger than life that it's like, I would buy into almost any premise with Harley. So it's been really fun to explore that.
Cool.
And before we wrap up here, why don't we, is there anything you want to tease about what's coming up in Wayne Family Adventures?
Well, we still got a lot more to go in season 3. We've been sort of exploring the team dynamics and the leadership dynamics between all the Bat family members this season and adding a lot of drama, bringing the Joker back. So we've still got some more appearances by characters that we either haven't seen before or haven't seen a lot of coming up. So some cameos. And obviously, it's all going to come to a big conclusion, a big bang. So we will see what happens at the end of season 3.
Awesome. And that's up every Thursday. Is that correct? New episodes?
Yes, up every Thursday.
Awesome. CRC, thank you so much for coming on. Congratulations on the success. This book is so great. I can't wait to read more.
Thank you so much. It was so fun being on here.
So cool.
You guys.
All right. Have a good night. Bye.
Good night.
All right, there we go. Once again, it is Batman Wayne Family Adventures. You can check it out on Webtoon with new episodes, as we said, every Thursday.
Enjoyable.
Super fun.
Yeah.
For anybody who likes just like a good hangout comic with the Bat Family, it's just a delight.
Plus, it's nice when Alfred gets to kind of chime in and call Bruce out on the shit a little bit.
No, he's dead. He's dead.
Yeah, you just miss Alfred. This is your only Alfred fix.
Hey, man.
Anyway,
What happened? What happened? Are you crying? Are you crying?
you got very red, and there seems to be water coming from your eyes. Why don't we bring in our next guest? He is the writer behind the Powerpuff Girls Winter Snowdown Showdown, out now from Dynamite, but he also wrote a tale from Marvel Holiday Tales to Astonish, but we have no choice to call him anything other than Daniel Doc Holliday Kibblesmith. Daniel, welcome to the show. Hello.
Hey, welcome.
Wow.
How are you?
Oh, you're muted. You're muted. You're muted. Whatever you're saying that's very funny, I can't hear it at the moment.
Oh, it was not funny. Thank you for the tee-up. No. I was just saying I've never gotten a good nickname before. Is Doc Holliday, is he Val Kilmer in the movie? Is he your
In the movie, yes.
Yeah, he's dying of tuberculosis, so
Who
appropriate,
isn't?
I guess.
And that's his defining quality in the movie. He's famous for being, I have tuberculosis.
I will say, if you have tuberculosis in a movie, that is your defining quality in a movie. That's like antlers. You can't not have tuberculosis.
Just a tiny hanky with a blood spot on it. That'll do.
I know the rules.
Yeah, my wife and I have that as a running joke. Just whenever one of us coughs, the other one is like, "Oh no, TB."
Yeah, man.
Just because you know.
That's real
dark.
fun, dude. That's real fun.
You know
thing that
who-
We
would
love
like
each
to-
other very much.
You know who tests positive for tuberculosis is this guy. Because a lady, this is not about comics. A lady had it in my building when I was a baby.
Oh my god!
What?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's how old I am.
You grew up in the 19th century?
Yeah.
Wild West?
Yep. Yeah, it was, I'm a real Benjamin Grimm in my overcrowded tenement housing.
Well, why don't we talk about these books instead of Doc?
Well,
No, this is good. We're getting somewhere with this.
And tuberculosis. All right, so this came out last week, I want to say. The Powerpuff Girls Winter Snowdown Showdown, which per the title is a winter special from Dynamite, all about the Powerpuff Girls. Very fun, very enjoyable, capturing the voices perfectly. What was it like to get to play in this particular sandbox?
I was so thrilled. I didn't know that I was going to get this offer. I'm also doing Darkwing Duck with Dynamite starting in February, and that was something that I talked to them about and pursued. I knew that there were Powerpuff Girls comics coming out, but even though I'm a gigantic fan of the Powerpuff Girls, I think I was the exact right age when it hit to just be sort of like an older like animation fan and comedy fan. And really getting to enjoy the characters and the comedy on multiple levels, because it's this unreal, like, it's a perfect idea. It's one of the best. It's one of the best ideas in all of entertainment. And the characters are so pure and so consistent and clear that in some ways it's like any IP job, and I've had a lot of them. It's you internalize so much of their voices over the years that if you love this thing and you've worked hard to understand it, it just pours out of you when you start typing.
Wow.
That's a beautiful.
Yeah, that's it. I just wanted to say, just kind of echo what Zelbatron said earlier. I'm a huge fan of Powerpuff Girls, and I do think it's, like you said, it hit a sweet spot for me. And this feels like such a great extension of it. I love when I pick up a comic and it feels like the creators of the show also worked on the comic. You nailed the voices and everything. I mean, Mojo Jojo is my favorite. Also, just like the mayor and, there's just so many great layers to, and tons of bits. I mean, I've rewatched Powerpuff Girls and I was like, there's a lot of stuff for adults in here. I was surprised.
Heavily, yeah. Comes out of that sort of golden age of Cartoon Network animation, where they were really developing, what their sort of like the Venn diagram of their identity would be, with properties like, Dexter, obviously, and then even just going forward to Adventure Time and Steven Universe, this real like comedy forward stuff that still just has so much heart and warmth, and is for the whole family. It was very, very Christmassy, actually, very holiday.
Yeah, right. Inevitable. I was watching Powerpuff with my kids recently, and I hadn't watched it in a long time, and it is amazing how much comedy, action, and character they cram into the most spare show. And I remember when it came out, it was such a revelation. And I feel like so many shows have now taken this on as a way of telling stories.
Yeah, no, hugely influential. And also like bridging the sort of Western and anime gap as well. Like a show that, like, you mentioned comedy, you mentioned character. I would also throw out like design, like the aesthetic of Powerpuff Girls is so singular and iconic and, consistent unto itself. And yeah, everybody tried really, really hard to get it right.
Well, what about on the other side of it? You're also doing a holiday special at the same time. What is important to you to capture when you're doing a one-shot all focused on the holidays?
That's a great question, because you mentioned we also did a Marvel Holiday Tales to Astonish, which was a Kitty Pryde Hanukkah story. So I was writing both of these at the same time, and I celebrate both Christmas and Hanukkah. I'm from one of those, American blended families that just likes presents, I guess.
You're holiday obsessed.
Double down. Why not,
exactly.
Man? Yeah.
Exactly. So,
that's why you're Doc Holliday. Right. You celebrate them all.
So I think that, one of the things I like about writing famous characters is that I have spent so much time with them, and I feel like I know them. I think if you put... the example I always use is I did a Black Panther and Deadpool comic a few years ago. If you put those guys in a room, you kind of know what they're going to do. If you put a gun on the table, you kind of know what they're going to do. If you put a goose on the table, you kind of know what they're going to do. So I think with the holiday stuff, it's the same thing. It's like it's this shared pool of archetypes and iconography and feelings that, in some ways... holiday is like a genre on top of a genre. Sure. Christmas stories have a lot of recurring tropes and rhythms and things that, you expect, and you can deliver those or subvert those as a writer. Without spoiling it, my favorite scene in this is that we do a homage to Linus's speech in the Peanuts Christmas special and we have Bubbles delivering it, and it doesn't go quite as well. But that kind of stuff you get to draw from.
I want to ask with something like you've done a ton of sort of, I'll call them comedy forward comics in your career. Like, can you break down like the anatomy, especially something like Powerpuff Girls, the anatomy of writing a joke here and working with the artist and sort of like putting it in, finding the right joke, crossing off one that doesn't work, and really being like, yes, this is it?
Sure. I mean, it kind of depends project to project. So in making a comic book, if things are going well schedule wise, you have multiple opportunities to look at. Sometimes I get to see, after I've written a script, sometimes I get to see thumbnails and layouts and inks and do a pass like just for lettering, which is usually for me like removing dialogue, so more of the arts can sing and do the storytelling. In the case of comedy, that's really valuable because you get to see where the artist has added things or changed things, and making sure that the jokes still work with the art, or if I discover opportunities for new jokes usually if I'm doing something that's intended to be funny. So it depends on the individual artist and process and schedule. Sometimes there are language barriers, which editors are really good at navigating, but can be tricky for comedy. But I've just gotten so lucky working with people who like really get it. And when you start off with Powerpuff Girls, it's like they know it's funny, so they're bringing their A game.
They're not drawing the dark take that you have.
Exactly.
To like, maybe let's pull it back a little bit.
But I think comics are so useful for comedy, and I think the first thing that people think of is like funny situations or funny dialogue. Like Deadpool does or says something funny. But like for me, writing comedy and comics is all this like kind of Scott McCloud understanding comics stuff about what the form can do. And in our X-Men Hanukkah story, there's a gag where it's just 3 panels of Kurt and Kitty from the same angle because they're in a photo booth. And that moment, even though it doesn't look like that in real life, it feels like that when you turn it into a comic book. Here's 1 second of cheese. And it's just opportunities like that. Like, this is something that only a comic can do.
Now, I have another question about that, of the Kitty Pryde story. I feel like you thread a lot of continuity needles. You're talking about continuity with CRC Payne as well. Like, I feel like you're purposely like, let me see if I can do all of this. Can you talk about that? And I'm assuming you love these Kitty Pryde stories that you're bringing together.
Yeah, I mean, you say purposely, but like that's another word for very stupidly, Like,
that's how I live my life.
Giving myself that assignment. Yeah. Well, there's a lot of back and forth. My editor on that, Darren Shan, he asked another Marvel editor that I've worked with a lot, Will Moss. We're doing this holiday special. Do you know a Jewish writer who is obsessed with Kitty Pryde? And he said Daniel Kibblesmith.
Off the dome.
Because I'm a really big Nightcrawler and Excalibur person as well, and obviously Kitty, goes right along with that. So I've been trying to do these characters, and especially any homage to the Claremont Byrne era that anyone would let me, for years. And it's so great that they make things like holiday specials, because it's such a rare opportunity to do something that doesn't impact the rest of the Marvel universe, isn't really affected by any other stories or mandates. So I think we were talking about an idea. The phone call was almost totally over. And then I realized, like, the story is going to be 8 pages. It became 10, but at the time, the story is going to be 8 pages. So even though we have this whole other idea that we've already settled on, what if every page was like this really ultra-dense, action-packed solo or a 1-page story from a different adventure of the Claremont Byrne era, and they all have to fit into continuity, and they have to go in the right order for themselves as well. And like, they're all going to have like 6 X-Men and 12 villains on page. And it just a huge, huge, huge respect to Pat Olive, who drew that. And who I am most familiar with from a very similar project, which was the Untold Tales of Spider-Man, which is another fitting into the continuity kind of exercise. So yeah, once we had it, that's collaboration, that's making art. Like once you have the idea, it's like, well, we can't not do it. Like we're just stuck in it now because we fell in love.
We're going to eat 9 pies for dinner, and we decided that, so that's what we're doing.
I do want to ask you, though, about Darkwing Duck, which you brought up earlier and is coming out in February. This is a brand new series, but picking up after the previous series. What's your take on it? What can we expect?
Thank you for asking. My take is I love Darkwing Duck so much. No, my sort of
good hands.
Yeah, man. I hope so. We're doing our best. But it's me. It's Branton Stein, tremendous arts team that I'm a big fan of. Going back to the book Crowded that they did. The sort of like near future funny satire, and Darkwing Duck creator Tad Stone doing variant covers, which so cool. I'm hoping I get copies of in the mail. So yeah, the short answer is I've read every Darkwing Duck comic I can find, which is most of them. A lot of it's out of print. I got a lot of stuff through interlibrary loan, but I did manage to track down a lot. And one thing that they all really focus on is being a comic book. They do a good job. Like Darkwing's been a TV show already. What does this look like as a superhero comic book? It's serialized. It's paced differently. And once I saw that had largely been done, I was like, great. That frees me up to do back to basics. Every issue, that's like a Freudian slip. Every issue of our Darkwing Duck comic is going to be like a lost episode of the show. It's very loosely serialized. There's sort of a background story about Darkwing looking for his archenemy because he thinks an archenemy will define him and help him finish writing his autobiography. But generally speaking, every issue is one brand new story, beginning, middle, and end, written to feel like an episode of Darkwing Duck with a classic villain or a team up of classic villains that we've never seen before. If you miss one, you can pick up the next one, no problem. But don't miss one. So this is essentially, I grew up watching the show. I'm really excited to share it with my kid. I want people to buy this comic, people my age to buy this comic and share it with their children. I want children to find it on their own. But it's my audition for writing for Darkwing Duck in 1991. I'm just trying to get it as close as possible to feeling like lost episodes of the show.
I mean, when I was a kid watching Darkwing Duck, I was like, how is this happening? All of my interests have aligned here as a child. And the fact, and it felt so unlikely, the catchphrase was, let's get dangerous. Yeah. Not necessarily something that would definitely pass the test in modern television.
It's pretty, I mean, obviously I've been rewatching them, and there's a really great line where Goslin wants to go to the mini golf course. So they're playing mini golf inside while Darkwing, as Drake Mallard, is trying to take a nap, and she puts a golf ball on his puckered beak and is about to hit it off of his face. And he says, "Goslin, did I ever tell you the story about the little girl and the golf club and the firing squad?" That was on a Disney afternoon cartoon in the 90s.
Shit was wild back then. Everything was moving so fast. They just didn't read all the scripts. All those shows. I feel like it was like
classics. That's how you make something that, stays with me for, 30 years. And
the Rescue Rangers episode that was the Cuckoo Cola cult. I was like, how is this a reference to an actual cult that had happened sort of like 20 years before? I was like,
animation people are weird.
Yeah,
we are weird 100%. People.
Yeah.
We're going to have to let you go in a second, but before we do, I know we've touched on a bunch of stuff, but anything else you want to plug?
The holiday specials are on sale right now. That's Powerpuff Girls and Marvel Holiday Tales to Astonish. Darkwing Duck starts in February. I can't say why, but everybody just continue subscribing to Netflix. Eventually, I might be telling people to watch Netflix for some reason.
Squid Game.
Continue to
Squid Game, I hear.
That's right. Squid Game, the all-ages animated series. And in March, Rick and Morty Finals Week, the paperback is coming out with a one-shot, not a one-shot because it's part of this anthology, but a Sherlock Holmes story written by me that I'm really proud of. And if you like that Rick and Morty comic written by me, maybe just remember that you had that thoughts in case something else gets announced at some point.
A lot of thoughts to hold on to there for the future.
Yeah.
I love that.
Awesome. Daniel, always great talking to you. Good luck with the tuberculosis and happy holidays.
Yeah.
Stay fresh, Doc
Holidays.
Holliday. Good luck out there.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. All right, there we go. Once again, he just plugged everything, but I'll do it again. Anyway, the Powerpuff Girls Winter Snowdown Showdown
It's a good
is
time.
out now.
Very fun
Dynamite,
books.
Marvel Holiday Tales to Astonish, also out, and Darkwing Duck comes out in February. And we do have one more guest for you.
Woo-hoo!
One of our favorite guys to chat with. Very excited to have him back on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, Greg Pak. Greg.
Yeah.
There he is.
Hello.
Oh my gosh!
Well,
Now, I don't want to
Yes,
say it
Greg
happened
Pak.
this way, but you
Yes,
had a
Greg
beard,
Pak.
Greg, and then we all grew beards separately. I'm just saying
That's just because you're cool. Because you're cool. You're the cool kids.
it works.
No, you are the cool kid, Greg, and you're the cool kid because you always have so much going on. But I wanted to do something a little special tonight because it is your 20th anniversary in mainstream comics.
Yeah, happy
Yes,
anniversary.
that's-
Happy
Thank you very
anniversary.
Thank you for all of your amazing writing.
Before, well, we'll get to something at the end there, but you've been doing so many different things over the years, and I wanted to kind of not to do like a "this is your life," but take a look back through a bunch of those and kind of like touch on them a little bit and get your thoughts on them. So let's kick it off
Oh yeah.
with
Wow.
the first. I think this was the first mainstream work you did was Warlock,
It
a
was.
4-issue miniseries from Marvel. It came out. We missed the anniversary a little bit. It came out November 1st, 2004. What was it like getting this book? What was it like jumping into mainstream comics like this?
It was pretty amazing, and at the same time, it was just kind of an everyday thing in a weird way. You know what I mean? Like I had come up through independent film, and so I was always, just trying to do cool stories with a small group of people. And I got a meeting at Marvel, and yes, Marvel is, biggest comic book company in the world. Not in the world. That's not correct. The biggest comic book company in America, and at the time was like Marvel and DC. Those are the two biggies.
Yeah.
That's like walking into a major studio, but it's comics. And so the experience of actually working on the book was the same kind of experience that I had working in independent film, just, work with a small group of people trying to tell cool stories, trying to figure stuff out.
Wild coming up in independent film and then comics, two of the hardest industries to do anything. And here you are being like, I've done this. Let me try this equally as hard one.
Well, I mean, the wild thing is that, so I'm Asian American, half Korean, half white. I have spent, as you guys know, a lot of my career making stories that have non-white characters and just, different characters of different backgrounds. And in the film world, it was, in the independent film world, if you're, scrounging up the money, you're doing your own little, $200 short films and all that kind of stuff, and then or scrounging up the money to do your scrappy little feature. You cast it however you want, but once you're trying to get money from investors, 20 years ago, I couldn't do it. I had a feature film that I've been trying to make forever called Rio Chino, which is a Chinese gunslinger movie with a Chinese hero and a Mexican heroine, and nobody could see their way. They couldn't, like, nobody with money could see their way to making that. So, so that was always incredibly frustrating. I come over to comics, and like in this Warlock book, I was like, they wanted me to kind of reimagine Warlock, kind of going back to his sort of origins as an artificial creation. because Corey Settlemeyer had seen my movie Robot Stories, which was a independent movie, which
hell yeah, Robot Stories.
Life, Death, Family, and Robots.
Shouted out in the comments a couple minutes ago, Fi Tamradar.
Oh, that's very cool. Thank you very much. So they pulled me on board to do this Warlock book with an idea of looking at it as artificial human, with a little bit of a different take from the cosmic stuff. Although by the end of it, we got deep into all the cosmic stuff, the sort of classic Marvel cosmic stuff. So that's how I got into comics. And then, and then I was like, okay, well, can I have this supporting, and I pitched the idea of this supporting character as this Asian American designer who had won a contest designing a new look for Warlock and all this kind of stuff, and then she gets pulled into this wild situation and discovers what's really going on. But there was zero question or pushback. The question never came up, why does she have to be Asian? In the movie business, that question always comes up, or
Right.
always would come up back then. Same thing. Like the next year when I introduced Amadeus Cho, or when I had the chance to pitch this character Amadeus Cho, they were just like, "Sounds great." There was no.
Yeah.
Well, let's jump forward to that then, because that was actually the next thing I wanted to talk about. Was in Amazing Fantasy Volume 2, number 15, you introduced Amadeus Cho. So you were already segueing into that. But what was it like introducing this character into the Marvel Universe?
It was a total kick in the pants, as I know is your favorite phrase.
There it is.
Man.
There it is.
You brought it up before I could.
There, I did it. It was great. They had this initiative where they got a bunch of sort of new writers at Marvel to take old names that Marvel owned and reimagine new characters and do little 8-page stories based on them. And it was, and I picked out the name Mastermind Excello just because it was so over the top and wild. And I made up the story of like a kid who wins the Excello soap company's online a brain game kind of thing, and then his parents get blown up and he's on the run because it was actually a targeting exercise to find this smart kid who they're going to either recruit or kill. And Takeshi Miyazawa came in to draw it, and from the initial, the very first sketch he did, it was like, that's the guy, you know what I mean? Tak, and I've worked with Tak every opportunity I get ever since, and it's been right, exactly. It's been I just love working with that guy. There's some artists who just kind of step into your brain and they're already there, and so when you write something, it's like they just all the nuances there, all the humor, all the drama, and Tak also has this brilliant ability just to draw normal people and make them look incredibly compelling. You know what I mean? Very naturalistic, but totally compelling in that at the same time. It's a real gift, for so early on to get hooked up with such an amazing collaborator. And then on the character's just taken off, so it's been amazing.
Well, I was going to say, how does it feel? Exactly. That was my question. How does it feel to sort of get one through past the goalie? You've got a character into the consciousness where people will just write story. Amadeus Cho must appear in comics, you have no idea, and you're like, oh, look at that, I made that. That must be wild.
It is. That was always the dream. I'll tell you, when I first came up with the idea for him, I was like, I could do this independently. I could just take this idea and do this character on my own. But I was also like, Marvel needs an Asian American kid who talks too much. You know what I mean? Because there wasn't.
Yeah.
There's a bunch at the time. There were a bunch of Asian characters from Asia, which are fine. But there were hardly any. Jubilee aside, there were hardly any Asian American superheroes, and no young Asian American male superheroes in particular. Right. And it was like that. There's a space for that. And at the time, I also just wanted to write a character who talked too much because I'd been, writing a lot of terse characters. So, but it was, I was thrilled that the character took off, and everything that's happened with the character has been amazing. He's been in multiple TV shows now. He's going to be in this new Spider-Man TV show that's coming up. He's been in, I think, at least 2 or 3 video games. There are rumors that I can neither confirm nor deny. I don't know anything more than anybody else that he's going to show up in the movies. I mean, a character who has the same name as his mom showed up in one of the movies a number of years ago. So it's like, I mean, yeah, it feels great. But it's also like that's kind of like the job that I set for myself. That like all through my life, I've been yapping about representation and about the need to have like the stories that are put out there in the mainstream should reflect the world we live in.
Well, let's talk about something that's maybe a little different, but has really stuck with people. This is, I don't want to say your magnum opus, but this is definitely the thing that people talk about a lot is you've got Planet Hulk and World War Hulk as a pair of stories. What was it like getting into those? And when was the point you realized this was going to be a thing that people were going to be talking about for decades to come?
Yeah, it was, it was wild because I came on board to do, there was a point when, I'd done a bunch of miniseries, and then finally it looked like they were going to put me on an ongoing book. And I'd always been dropping these big hints about how much I loved Hulk. But at the time they were looking at like Hulk or Wolverine. I was like, you can give me both. But in the end, I mean, I did a whole pitch for Wolverine and everything. But in the end, I got the Hulk, and it was perfect. I really wanted it. I love the Hulk. I've always loved that character. The Bill Bixby show, I've said this many times, was sort of my introduction to the literary concept of tragedy. It sounds like a joke, but it's totally true. You know what I mean? It was the first sort of mainstream thing where it was like, sad ending every episode. Like,
extremely dour television show for young people to be watching.
Going on there, but it was really compelling. I loved it. And so the Hulk has always been my favorite superhero. I mean, it's also, Hulk is also an interesting sci-fi character, right? Because he's almost more sci-fi than superhero a lot of the time. I mean, he fits in a superhero universe, but he works as a sci-fi character, pure sci-fi. I mean, people also talk about it as a horror character, which applies. Sure. But so the pitch that I got was Danny Way's doing this story where, the Hulk's been tricked into a satellite and they're going to shoot him into space. So we want to send him to a planet and he's going to, be a gladiator. And what do you think? And I was like, yes, please. And they basically cut me loose to do everything else. I mean, I think Joe Quesada gave me one other thing. He thought that the Hulk should have like a friend who betrays him, and that friend's name should be Meek. So that was pretty much it. And so I got to I partnered up with Mark Paniccia, editor, who is one of my longest collaborators in comics now. We've worked on so many things, including the Star Wars books later on down the line. But and we just we'd meet every week. We were both. I mean, like that was when Marvel's still in New York, but we would meet in a pizza joint around the corner from the Marvel office and just sit in the back and cackle as as I was pitching ideas and we were talking about stuff. And it was a dream, I got to create this whole world, got to figure out this whole journey, you know what I mean? And originally, they were like, okay, you got 8 issues. And I turned, we did an outline. I did an outline and all that. And then they were like, actually, you got 12 issues because, Civil War is going to happen during this time. So we need to keep the Hulk off the table. And then it became clear that the Hulk was going to come down after Civil War and be angry and smash stuff. And so I was, writing to lead up to that. And then finally they were like, okay, and you can write that story too. You know what I mean? So,
and how did it feel at that moment when you're like, this is a character you wanted to write forever and it's cresting, like it's peaking in its
It was kind of wild. It started to feel like that around, I think like the second issue, around the second issue was coming out of the Planet Hulk storyline, because the numbers were going up. Which never happens. The numbers don't go up, in comics.
Starts high and goes down.
Starts high, goes down. This started, the Hulk was doing like, 35,000 a month, which great numbers now, but back then was like not so great, you know what I mean? And it started to climb up, you know what I mean? Which is like, what's going on here?
And you're like, whoo!
It felt like lightning in a bottle, And Carlo Pagulayan was just such an incredible partner and so creative and so dynamic. And Aaron Lopresti was the swing artist and did a tremendous job. And Chris Sotomayor was the colorist. I remember Chris emailed me early on and wanted to kind of talk, and it was amazing to have, like that doesn't always happen. You don't always have creative conversations with everybody on the team like that. But and Chris came up with this idea of like, okay, if Hulk's on this planet, it says, Hulk should be the only green thing on this planet. Let's do that. And I was like, that's amazing. You know what I mean?
Great.
And then we did a couple little trick things, because spoiler alert, there's a character that the Hulk is very much in opposition to when it begins, but then later on, it's enemies to lovers. And her eyes are green. That's the only other green thing in the first issue.
I never noticed that. That's so cool.
Yeah. And then later on, like just because Chris put that idea in my head as we went on, and I was like, Hulk's getting mangled in all these battles, and he's fighting for people, and becoming this sort of folk hero, and then I was like, okay, so his green blood is splashing, and then green vines started to grow out of the places where his green vine that became like part of the prophecy and all of this. It's like green vegetation flowing as he literally bleeds for this world. So, like that kind of dynamic where you have amazing collaborators and you have the time and space to bounce ideas off and develop it over time it was gold. It was just amazing. When I held that big collection, they came out with a giant hardcover. It was like, that was the first time I was like, this, I mean, not the first time, but it was like, this is really, that's something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To have a big fat hardcover on my shelf.
I want to skip ahead a little bit. I'm just going to mention some things that are some of my favorites that we've talked about a lot on the show. There's, of course, incredible Hercules that we loved.
Fun.
Such a fun book.
Amadeus,
yes.
So I know you're trying to rush through
this.
this. I just want to say real quick on this. It's amazing that this was like someone coming in to be different, to replace the Hulk in a way. And you brought a whole new, it wasn't like it's similar. It was a whole new flavor. There's so much comedy in this book that I appreciated.
Oh my God, it was so
fun.
It
was such a surprise and a fun surprise.
Well, this was a blast because this was a book.
Kick in the pants.
Yeah, it was a kick in the pants. But nobody kind of thought that this would. There weren't a lot of huge expectations for this. It was sort of a, like the Herc and Amadeus thing was, people really dug it. David Gabriel at Marvel really loved it, and he was like, I wanted to do a Renegades book, which was going to take all of the heroes who sided with Hulk during World War Hulk and team them up and do basically a book of renegades of Marvel superheroes who were like on the run basically all the time. And but they came back and were like, what about just doing a book with Herc and Amadeus? And I was like, that sounds awesome, actually, because those two were great. And then Mark, I had a pretty full plate because I was balancing a couple of other books at the same time, including the Scar book that we were developing. And Mark was like, well, why don't we get a co-writer with you? And he was like, Fred Van Lente is really great. He also lives in New York. He's got a really amazing sense of humor. Maybe you all could, if you hit it off, maybe got together with Fred, and it was just like, we became buddies while we were working on this buddy book. And another one of those things that just was lightning in a bottle. I mean, people loved it. That book was, we were approved for like 4 issues, and then we were approved for another 4 issues, and then another 4 issues, and it just kept going for like 4 years. I think we ended up doing like 40 or 50 issues over, various incarnations of the Hulk story. I mean, the Herc story. So it was something.
I did want to mention this one just because this is one that's really stuck with me, is Magneto Testament, which is totally different from all of those books that we've talked about before. What was it like getting into this mode? And for people who don't know, this is a pretty grounded look at Magneto during the Holocaust for the most part.
Yeah. So this was actually, I started working on this while I was working on Planet Hulk and World War Hulk. Warren Simons reached out to me. He was an editor at Marvel at the time, and he had always had this dream. Warren's Jewish, and he always had this dream of doing what he called Magneto Year One. And he said, Greg, I know you got a background in history, you studied history or something, and and I was just wondering, like, what do you think about Magneto Year One? And as soon as he said that, I knew exactly what he was talking about. You know what I mean? Like, and
Yeah.
So the idea was to do a real historically based story about a German Jewish kid trying to save his family during the rise of the Nazis and the Holocaust. And we worked with Giamenico. Oh my God, did I just space on his first name? Carmine.
Carmine, yeah.
D. Giamenico as the artist, and Matt Hollingsworth was the colorist, and that it was just a tremendous opportunity, and it was incredibly harrowing. I mean, I had beautiful. It's one of those things where if you're going to write something about the Holocaust, you better know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
you know what I mean, on every level, because there are Nazis out there who will jump on anything and use any mistake to try to discredit not just your book, but the whole idea of the reality of the Holocaust itself. And so it was deeply important to get the actual history right. And then the comics history is also really complicated and convoluted with a lot of unreliable narrators and different people telling different stories. And we just locked in, and we were like, because there's a whole thing where Magneto at one point in continuity claims that he's actually Romani, you know what I mean? And
right.
there are other points, of course, and then there's tons of history where it's very clear that he was actually Jewish and a Holocaust survivor. And we just made a bunch of executive decisions about what was, when people, like when he was telling stories and when he was telling the truth, and we locked in on made this definitive story that established him as a German Jewish kid. Father was a Jewish veteran of World War I, and they sort of experience and struggle to survive all these different aspects, from 1933 on. I think we see them, and eventually he ends up in Auschwitz, and where he meets Magda, or no, he's already known Magda, but where he's reunited with Magda again, but yeah, it was and ends up becoming a Sonderkommando, which is the worst and most harrowing job in Auschwitz. Those were the prisoners who were forced to basically help not kill people, but help run the machinery of the death camp. Like clearing out the clearing out the gas chambers and dealing with the bodies and everything. Just absolutely harrowing. But
I feel like this book took a part of Magneto's story that was very sort of surfacey and muddy, and gave it such an emotional grounding that I think has been suffused back into the character. Like, I gotta think that anybody writing Magneto is reading this to be like, here's where we can actually pull some root from. It feels like such a rooting book, I would say.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, I feel, huge credit to Claremont, because Claremont was the one who took this character and was like, and lay all the seeds. He didn't. It's interesting because if you read those, there were these backup stories in one of the Marvel X-Men books, which tell key points in this history, and it's not late. Like, he doesn't use the word Sonderkommando or you know what I mean, and all of that, or Einsatzgruppe and all that kind of stuff. But those are the moments that he's showing. You know what I mean? He's showing these very distinct and specific moments in the history of the Holocaust, and tying Max into them, so that was all seated there, and we were just able to take that and put it in a single volume and flesh it all out, I also really appreciated Warren. We also had a historical advisor, Mark Weitzman, I think. I'm trying to remember. I'm sorry if I'm getting that name wrong. He was at the Simon Wiesenthal Center at the time, and because we just wanted to get it all right, like I said.
Sure.
And a huge part of it also was like, there was a certain point when we were like, you know what, we can't have superpowers in this. You know what I mean? Like,
right? Yeah.
We can't have, like, he's not gonna save the day using superpowers, because that didn't happen. You know what I mean?
Right,
Like,
exactly.
And this is not like, this isn't a kind of like, I like there are stories where, you know, like there's the Tarantino movie, you know what I mean, which is has a very different ending for certain members of the Third Reich than reality, you know what I mean? And there's a context for that kind of story. This is not that kind of story, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, and so to have, you know, superheroes come in and save the day, or his superpowers help save the day, that just felt like it would be a lie and disrespectful for the material. And so we played it. I mean, like once the name Testament came to mind, it was like, this is what it's about. It's about, I mean, I think the moment in the research that really made it clear how to tell this story was when I read about, and sorry if this chokes me up lots of times when I talk about it, but they're in these death camps, they found like tins and just things that had been buried in different places around the camps. They dug them up, and they, you know, when they opened them up, they found testimony, like stuff these Sonderkommando, like they had written down what had happened, what they had seen. Wow. And they knew they were going to die because that's what happened to everybody who worked there. You know what I mean? But that was their testimony. They had to write that down, and they just hoped and prayed that somebody would find it. You know what I mean? And so that notion of like, that, I mean, that's resistance. You know what I mean? Like that, like that's, you may not, I mean, they didn't survive, but their words sure as hell did. You know what I mean? And that's, and that kind of, I don't know. So giving the book that name, and that's also the kind of experience of Magneto, or of Max Eisenhardt, and that he barely escapes. And it's not, you know, but it's about making sure this story is remembered and told, and hopefully people will. I mean, you know, like it's a cliche by this point, but never again. That's the message,
right?
Not to take a terrible conversational swerve and do a terrible segue here, but after Marvel, I mean, while we're talking about superheroes and social issues, you did end up doing a bunch of writing for DC. The one thing that I did want to call out in particular was a run on Action Comics, which I think people hopefully affectionately called the T-shirt era of Superman. But one of the things that I really loved about your work here was that it really was a ground level Superman. It was a Superman reconnecting with his roots from back in the day, where he was fighting for the workers and bringing him back to that. Yeah. What was it like working in that mode for the Man of Steel?
It was great. I mean, Aaron Cooter was my partner in crime through all of this. We started off as writer and artist, and by the end of it, we were co-writers.
Cool.
And
that's awesome.
Aaron is just like brilliant storyteller. This is one of those books that I was writing in what they call Marvel style, or what I like to call plot first, where I wasn't writing all the dialogue. I was writing just, you know, like, you know, I would usually break it down by panel, but I was just describing what happened. And then we'd send that to Aaron, and then we'd get on the phone and talk it through, and then he would, you know, he'd do layouts based on that, and then the art would come in, and then I'd dialogue based on the art, you know, and it was, and that doesn't work with everybody, you know what I mean? But Aaron, and most artists don't really want to work that way, honestly. But Aaron's just a tremendous storyteller, and that was, he loved working that way, and I loved working that way with him, and so there's a real, I don't know, a real fluidity to the way that book worked. I think that was just incredibly exciting, and yeah, this whole notion of like, you know, of Clark as an underdog and sticking up for everyday people, I think was just really. I mean, I love characters like that. I always love characters that. I mean, I think that's probably throughout all of the stuff I've written. I tend to write outsiders and people who stick up for other outsiders. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I mean, I think about the Hulk, think about Amadeus, you know, and Clark here. Like, they're all that's very much kind of a ongoing theme.
Well, it's wild to move through these like major characters in these universes and sort of you're not pulling them toward you, but you're sort of like. It seems like you're finding you in them and telling that story through them.
I mean, whenever I get pulled onto a book, it's like they pulled me on because they they pulled me on because I'm me. You know what I mean? They
right.
You know what I mean? I'm serious. Like it's like there's
definitely
there's some kind of vibe or story or sensibility that they like. So I try not to be shy. I always pitch the biggest thing I have. You know what I mean? And like I don't try to, I'm going to hold back on this because maybe they won't like. No, I'm just gonna. I'm gonna give it to him. Here I am. I'm a lot. I don't, and
that's it.
Because what else am I gonna do? You know what I mean? That's I'm a writer.
That's hilarious.
I gotta do it. So, and not everything always flies, but I think enough flies that it works, and I mean, Superman is one of those characters too. Like Clark, I just get him. You know what I mean? He's this lawful good sucker in a chaotic neutral world. And he's just trying to trying to do the right thing. Feeling
write that down
about it. That's very very relatable.
There were just a couple more titles that I wanted to touch on, and this is very much jumping around. But Ages of Atlas, I thought was a good one, particularly because that brings together a lot of stuff we've been talking about. Start going back to Amadeus Cho, who is on this team, who is now a all Asian / Asian American team, I believe.
Yeah. So when I was writing, the Amadeus story took a couple of wild twists and turns. One point they called me up and was like, "We want to make Amadeus the Hulk. Would you want to write it?" I was like, "Yeah." And so because
we're combining your interests, would you be interested in doing it?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Can we put him in Star Wars universe too? But no, it was great. But as one of those storylines, I had this idea of like, I just want to get all of these Asian American superheroes together and just do a kind of fun story. And we did this story, which is one of my favorite. It should have gotten an Eisner. One of my favorite stories of all time. Totally Awesome Hulk number 15, where they, like these various Asian American heroes get together. They do a benefit for like a bone marrow awareness charity, which is an Asian American thing, and then they go and have Korean barbecue and do karaoke, a fight over the check. Some karaoke, and then they fight an invasion of aliens, and it's freaking great. And that team was called the Protectors, and I just wanted to do more with that and kept pitching it, and eventually they called me up and they were like, "Hey, we got this big wild crossover thing going on, and there's going to be it's going to happen over the whole world, and we got this idea of maybe you could do your Protectors thing with these other Asian characters, with some of the characters you're using before, as well as these other Asian characters that Marvel had developed in China with Chinese creators." And I was like, let's do it. And that's what Agents of Atlas became. And we did, I think, 3 different miniseries. This book also had another one of those characters that just popped because I was like, all right, we got this set of characters. Most of them are East Asian, but it's this Pan-Asian set of characters. We've got like Ms. Marvel, who was, South Asian. There were other South Asian characters, but there was no Southeast Asian character. And I was like, the diversity within diversity. That's the juice, right? You know what I mean?
Specificity.
Yeah, exactly. And so I was like, let's do a Filipina character, because I haven't really seen that. And we got Lanil Yu to co-create her, and that's how Wave came about. So Wave, she's not on this particular cover that we're looking at here, but Wave was introduced in that book, and that book sold out, like, that went to 3 or 4 different printings. A comic book shop in the Philippines did their own printing of that and sold something like 5,000 or 6,000 copies alone in one comic book shop in the Philippines. They told me it was their highest selling book of all time.
Man, that's cool.
And then that character, like, she ended up in games almost right away, and it was just, it was great, So
that's awesome.
But yeah, so that was another one of those, little lightning in a bottle moments.
Well, and I know we've talked a lot about Marvel and DC stuff here, but I felt remiss not mentioning you've done so many other things.
Oh, yeah.
Mech Cadet U from Boom Studios, right? Which has been big success. It was adapted. What is it about this idea that popped?
Well, Talk and I co-created Amadeus, and we just wanted to work together more. And I was like, Talk, I got this idea about, like, Asian American kid and this giant robot, and like these kids and their giant, like there's this academy, and they get, you know, like there's mysterious giant robots come out of the sky every few years, and this academy trains kids to go out and bond with them, and then they end up, you know, like saving the world. And Talk was like, I'm in. And we were going to do it as a Kickstarter, and then we ended up putting that on hold for a while. And then I was doing a signing at the San Diego Comic-Con, and Cameron Chittock from Boom Studios came walking up and said, Greg, we love what you do. You got anything? And I was like, you know what? And because we'd done a 10-page story of this for an Asian American anthology. And I was like, let me send you this thing. And he looked at it and he was like, this is awesome. And we did it. We did it as a book at Boom. There's another one of those things. Like, we had a plan for like 4 issues. And you know, if it had to, you know, like if that was it, that was it. But it sold really well. It did really well. And we ended up doing 12. So we got to do our whole story. And then a few years later, it got, you know, picked up by Netflix, and they made a animated show based on it, and we did a second series, and it's just been it's been amazing. I mean, that's a really near and dear project to my heart.
So that is the broadest of all possible overviews of the first 20 years, but kicking off the second 20 years on January 1st.
More, let's go.
Just to wrap it up here is Sam Wilson, Captain America, is coming out on January 1st. This seems to, I'm just intuiting something here, this seems to be tying into some sort of movie that might be coming out in some way.
Smart.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, just a little bit. But
yes.
Talk about this book.
Yeah, so this is a story of so Sam Wilson was the Falcon. Now he's Captain America. He used to be a sidekick. Now he carries the shield itself. What makes Sam really special is that he is a black superhero who is not former military. That sounds kind of
that's
like
well
like
observed.
Yeah, no, it's. I mean, I love about the way the character works in comics is that he was a social worker.
Yeah,
he was a social worker, and so there's an interesting thing. I mean, I think that no knock against, you know, superhero, like military superheroes. I've written a bunch of them over the years, created a few, including Hulkvarine. But there's something special about Sam Wilson and about that particular background and vibe, and there's something really special about the fact that in the Marvel universe there are multiple black superheroes who carry the shield. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Who have carried the shield at one time or another.
Yeah.
Who are black Captain Americas, for lack of a better word. And they interestingly represent sort of different ideas and different takes on what it is to be a citizen, really. You know what I mean? Like, and what it is, what the American dream is, and what the challenges this country face are. So the book gives us an amazing chance to sort of delve into that. Yes, you're going to see some really cool characters who you might not have seen for a while, and there's going to be really interesting conflicts and challenges for these characters in different ways. And then just the big fun punch of the whole thing is that you got, yes, Captain America versus Red Hulk, and you've got Captain America. You know, you've got a. I mean, the big premise is that this suspicious billionaire from Eagle Star has created this tremendous set of incredible floating platforms in the sky, and they're gonna do amazing things for people. But are they? And so it's.
I feel like no. I'm going to throw that out.
Just what you're saying.
Read the book, Alex.
But I guess
read
we'll
the
see.
book.
I don't know. But there's, so we've got that kind of big spy hijinks, that big sort of like big sci-fi hijinks, and the other bit that I just love is we've got Billy, Wilhelmina Wilson, who is Sam's cousin, cool. And who is like kind of a hustler, always just like a street level person who is trying just to make it through this world. You know, Sam gets to fly up above everything. She's down here on the street just trying to make it happen. And she's just incredibly fun and just a huge, amazing foil for Sam. Challenges him in all kinds of great ways. The art, the main pencils are by Eder Messias, who's amazing, and a Brazilian artist. And Val DeLandro is doing. He does a backup story in the first issue and does more pages for us, like some flashback pages. And Val is just. I've worked for them on a few things now. He's just tremendous. And the colors are from Fernando Cifuentes. Joe Caramanga is doing the lettering, and Alana Smith is the editor, and Evan Narcissus is the co-writer. Evan is there was no way I was going to do a book like this without Evan. Specifically, Evan knows and loves this character so much. Evan gets him and gets everything about this character on so many different levels, and brings a sort of like a years of understanding of all the characters we're working with. Like I'm the Hulk guy, so I got the Hulk stuff covered. Evan's got more of the Captain America lore, and specifically the Sam Wilson lore under his belt. I'm also the Boy Scout, you know what I mean? But Evan and I both were political science majors as well, which I didn't even realize when we first started. But we've got kind of very similar kind of interests and trajectories. Also, it's I'm half Asian. I feel like I've got a good grip on a lot of a lot of the perspective. A social worker who cares about people of color would have, but I'm not black, and this character, you know what I mean? And I feel like as much as possible these days, if I'm going to work on characters, of different backgrounds, where the very specific parts of those different backgrounds are an integral part of the story, I'm doing my best to partner up with folks who are bringing that lived experience, and so it's a tremendous team, and it's been a huge amount of fun.
That's, it feels like worth commenting, looking back as we talked about all these books, it feels like you're always bringing bigger ideas to comics, whether it's having comics reflect the world as it is, the stuff commenting on capitalism, or just anything that people are struggling with a little bit. That must be exhausting. And it feels like that is hard to do. So can you talk about why you're still doing that after 20 years in comics?
Well, that is, thank you for saying that must be exhausting, because sometimes it is. It is.
Yes.
I remember reading back when Twitter was not a cesspool, somebody on Twitter, a gay game developer on Twitter. I don't remember their name, unfortunately, but I remember they posted something saying that, as a gay person working in games, they felt like sometimes so much of their energy and kind of social capital was spent heading off horrible things.
Right.
That they were frustrated because they felt like they had less time just to make the game great. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like they were doing so much just to keep stuff from being horrible. In terms of representation and everything. And I have been fortunate in that I've had amazing editors throughout my whole comics experience in all the companies I've worked at who get it, you know what I mean? But at the same time, there is this extra pressure that as a creator you bring upon yourself whenever you are gonna do this kind of work, and because suddenly now you're responsible, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's
right.
It's like if you're, and that I remember Jenny Yang, Asian American performer, writer, talked about the rep sweats, the representation sweats. And she talked about, this was back when Fresh Off the Boat was first coming on.
Right. Yes.
And so one version of the rep sweats, and I think the original definition of the term was when a new thing is coming out that deals with your community. You know what I mean? You got the sweats, because it's like, I hope it's not terrible. You know what I mean? Like, we're all rooting for it, because if it's really bad, then, whatever, the executives are all going to say, well, we're done with that for now.
That's really funny when something gets defined, like new Asian sitcom coming. You're like, oh boy. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, good.
Let's hope, because that's the experience. Like, if it doesn't work, then suddenly it's like, oh, Asian stuff doesn't work.
We'll never do that for 10 years.
Let's not try that. Exactly. See you in 10 years, kid. So that's one version of Web Sweats. Another version of Web Sweats is when you've got your own thing coming out.
Yeah,
and it's like, did I screw it up? You know what I mean? And that's unfair, because like no one project, no one character represents the totality of any community. You know what I mean? So my thing is always like more, just more. And
it takes 20 years of doing that to really,
right. You know what I mean? So it's like I've done, introduced Amadeus Cho at Marvel. I did City Boy and
we didn't talk about City Boy, but I love City Boy.
Thank
it's
you.
such a, I want to see, I feel like it's just in what you've done so far. It touched on so many other larger parts of the universe. DC is such a city-based like universe. It's like, I want this. I want this everywhere.
So just in my own career, I've tried to do a bunch of different kinds. We reimagined Odd Job in the James Bond books for Dynamite.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
And so these are all very different characters. And that's kind of the point. It's like, you should be able to have, assassins and, heartbroken kids and anti-heroes and straight up, heroes and, like the kid in Lawful, who is like, who kind of is
another book we're loving.
Yeah, but like to have all of these different, and then there's so many other writers coming in and artists and creators doing so many different things. So just more like to have that panoply of variety takes some of the pressure off any one person from. There was a point, when I realized this is just unacceptable, that I was the only person of color writing a Marvel or DC book. This was a number of, this was like 10 or 12 years ago or something. I was like, what is, so I've kind of tried to, like whenever new folks come in, that I've, got contact with, I try to, reach out and help out and because it is hard, and every new person who comes in, it's a tricky, there are tricky balances, and it helps to talk it through, and no one is alone. We should not be anyway. I mean, it's also tough too, because in comics, just the nature of the way comics has developed or in the US and also the way things, we're the most accessible of all creators of pop culture around. You know what I mean? Like, there's Comic-Cons. You can go to a Comic-Con and like sit, stand at Scott Snyder's table. Scott Snyder,
most everyone is there. Yeah, you can see almost
stand at his table and chat with him for 10 minutes. You know what I mean? You can't do that with Steven Spielberg. You know what I mean? There's just no place for that. You know what I mean? And so all of us, medium, like all of us who are paid the medium-sized bucks or less, can become like the focal point of any criticism of the company. You know what I mean? And so that's so that's not. I mean, we get a lot of credit, which is nice, but there's also there's it can be a lot, but the thing is, like, why else am I doing this? You know what I mean? I want to tell stories that matter. And I want to tell stories about things, I'm here to, like, anybody who's telling stories should be telling stories that matter to them and that come out of their lived experience, and because that's the good stuff. You know what I mean? Like, we want to, like, if Chris Claremont, a Jewish dude, hadn't come in and done this work with Magneto, we wouldn't. You know what I mean? Like, he didn't just randomly do that. He did that because he cared, because that was so important to him. And that's, like these characters coming from very specific places make them compelling. It's the specificity that matters. So, you said
this a minute ago, but to define the first 20 years of your career, you said more. And I feel like that's maybe a nice word to put on it. Like, I feel like you're always chasing, whether it's more representation, just more deeper story. Like, it feels like you're gathering. And that's,
that's interesting, because there's a social and political aspect to that too, which is just like, we are all in the circle. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's a big thing. Like, we are not alone. We are included, you know what I mean? And that's like, comics are for everybody. These stories, like, the more specific it becomes, the more universal it becomes. Like, that's a thing that I just believe deeply in, you know? And so, storytelling is, I mean, the best thing. People don't change feelings of bigotry based on intellectual argument. You know what I mean? like if people hate each other, they change because they have experiences in their lives with actual human beings that change them. You know what I mean? Like, the cliche is, you know, like, a homophobic person who's turns out that their beloved son is gay has a better, that is, sometimes they don't come through. Lots of times they do. You know what I mean? Sometimes that is the kind of transformative thing. Oh, my kid is trans. Now I'm going to find out what this means. I love my kid. I'm going to love other people now too. You know what I mean? Like, that's a life, that kind of life experience is what really changes people. Stories are not as powerful but they're part of that. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not gonna overplay it. I'm not gonna say that stories are everything, because they're not. But we live our lives through stories, and so if the stories that we read have a more generous view of the world and humanize a wider range of people, that predisposes us to open those doors in our actual lives, I think. So that's the hope. So yeah, more.
Well, Greg, thank you for doing that for the past 20 years. Like we said, we're looking forward to 20, 40, 60, 1,000 more.
1,000 years.
And then you're done. No. And then we're cutting
Become
you
a
off.
vampire and then just keep cranking it out.
Exactly. We'll come back in a millennium and lament our sad, tragic vampire lives, but we'll have each other.
We'll have each other.
And podcasts, I guess.
And
podcasts.
Yes, exactly.
Greg, thank you so much. Thank you as always. Congratulations, and always a pleasure to chat.
And thank you all, because from the time I started, I mean, I feel like within a year of starting writing comics, I was going to that black box theater and doing.
We had you on the show early.
It was awesome. You know, I mean, it was kind of funny too, because I grew up, like, I came up doing improv comedy, and it was like, oh, this is sort of like a place where I could do improv and comics at the same time, and it was just like it was comics and comics. So it was y'all have always had I've had a very warm place in my heart for all y'all, and it really is a pleasure coming back here to talk about 20 years.
Right back at you, man.
And I'm being reminded by the audience here, by our official CBC chef before we go.
Oh, yes.
He has created a cocktail based on Sam Wilson Cocktail America.
Oh, my gosh.
For the show. Bourbon, honey, lemon juice, orange bitters, and lemon rind. This is from Brett Macris, who is the chef down at Shift in New Orleans, that everybody should check out.
We'll be there soon.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much. Really do appreciate you.
Love your work.
Thanks, Greg.
Pleasure, man.
Have a great night.
See you soon.
You too. Have a good one.
Bye. All right, there we go. Just to wrap up and plug the thing, Sam Wilson, Captain America comes out January 1st. Definitely check it out. I'm very excited to check it out. And check out everything else we mentioned. They're all amazing books.
Yes.
So good. What a great chat.
Great stuff.
And we are going to move on to even better stuff, if you can believe it, because it's time for my favorite section of the show. It is Audience Questions. And for audience questions, all you got to do is drop a question in the comments on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch, maybe Instagram. I'll take a look there as well. And I think we had a couple already.
There were some early ones. While you're looking, Alex, let me just shout out the beer I'm drinking. My favorite beer. I found it when I was out in away for Thanksgiving.
Lose it?
No, I sort of, because they don't sell it. They don't sell it in Brooklyn. But Deschutes Fresh Squeezed IPA, my fave. I got a couple Sixers, and I've been slowly working my way through. Shouts.
Wow, look at you.
Pete, do you have a garage yet?
No, I don't have a garage.
But what do you
have?
He has a garage inside his stomach, and that's all that matters.
Oh, boy. Here, I found one of them. Josh Citizen said now that Superman and Lois is done, where does Tyler Hoechlin rank in Superman's? I honestly don't know, and this is no shade, but did either of you guys watch that show at all?
No, and
Okay.
this is definitely a question for you to answer. But I will say, Alex, you've always been sort of our Superman barometer.
Really?
I think so.
I appreciate that.
You've had strong opinions about all of the Superman movies and the men in the roles. So I think, to the point where I was like, I don't know, they're fine. Like, it's cool. They're doing it. This is on you to define.
First of all, he was a really, really good Superman, like a shockingly good Superman. When I heard about his casting, yes, I do have strong opinions.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, me? Who, me? You have the
about this
strongest
every
take.
day of my life.
You have the bullet in the chamber on Tyler Hoechlin.
No, just like he always has like this perma stubble. He came out of Teen Wolf on MTV, very different vibe, but he crushed it. Like he crushed the hope of Superman, the inspiration of Superman. His Clark was bumbling and funny and sweet. The relationship between him and Lois was great as well. I mean, in terms of ranking him, Christopher Reeve is kind of untouchable, I think, as number one. Brandon Routh actually really came out through doing it again and doing it in a different sense through the Arrowverse stuff that I think he really showed himself to not just be a one and done in a mixed movie. I think he was very good. Tyler Hoechlin I'd probably rank above him though. He was great. Like he got to do it more at bat. So there is that.
Where's
Henry
the
Cavill.
Calvarine?
No,
Come on.
Just a hard no on that.
What?
No, no thank
Come
you.
on, dude.
No.
That's fine. That's okay.
No.
That's okay.
No.
It's okay for him to not
No,
like that.
you are no.
What about
How dare you?
What about Corn Sweat? Are you?
Oh
sweating
yeah,
Corn
I mean,
Sweat?
I don't know. I really like him as an actor. I'm excited to see what he does. If you ever watch, I feel like we talked about this before, but there was a series called Hollywood, which is one of Ryan Murphy's very minor shows on Netflix. But he plays
one of his many. Like he was like, I got a Netflix deal. I'm gonna blow it.
I like that show just for its sheer ridiculousness, but David Cornsmith stars as like a earnest guy just off the bus trying to make it in Hollywood. So I feel like you do hopefully have a sense of what he's going to do with Superman there. And if it's the same sort of thing, I think it's going to be great. So we'll see. Dean Delp says, out of all the old CW shows that are no longer on, what show do you guys miss the most? I'm getting for Pete, it's Arrow, and for Alex and Justin, it's Riverdale. And I will say, not to keep on the Superman and Lois bed, but it was a real bummer. Oop, I just took off the question. We remember what it is. It's fine.
Yeah.
It was a real bummer watching the finale of Superman and Lois and being like, this is the last thing I'm ever going to watch on the CW.
This is the last show. Having worked on the show at the travel show I worked on was the last show on True TV. So there's a lot of that going around.
But I also liked what was the one where it was like the time traveler one? I mean, I agree with Dean. Like Arrow was my favorite, but my second favorite was
Time Traveler one.
Well,
No,
it was it was just a bunch of them all together, and they were kind of traveling.
Oh,
in space
Legends
and-
of Tomorrow.
Legends of
Tomorrow.
Yes.
Yeah, that was
Very
great.
fun.
I love
show.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Riverdale is probably the one that means the most to me.
Def. I mean, the first season of Stargirl was pretty cool. But Riverdale's the one that, like, you answered your own question, I would say. You know,
Yeah,
us
it's
too
nice
well.
about Dean asking questions. He also gives us the answers. You know, it's nice.
You're the
Yeah,
best.
it's the answer key. All the game says with Chris Evans' MCU return and maybe other OG Avengers, is there a worry there won't be enough time for the audience to know and care about the new Avengers team when they're introduced in Doomsday? For anybody who doesn't know, it was reported yesterday that Chris Evans is returning for Avengers Doomsday, but in a TBD role. They didn't say that he's going to be Captain America or anything like that. My guess, which I feel like I've mentioned before, is I really think they're going to put together an evil team of Avengers out of the original Avengers actors so that it feels bad for everybody while they're watching it.
I don't know how he's back. He died.
This is just a guess, but I think they're going to do an evil team of Avengers with the original actors.
Yes,
from the multiverse. I should have specified.
It's a multiverse, yes.
Multiverse.
Because I mean, the Robert Downey Jr. announcement sort of was very directly that, so it makes sense they're going to sort of get a little bit more of each of the each iteration of that. So I think that's what it's going to be. I feel like they're basically the danger and perhaps error is these are all the Avengers we like, and you're going to make them the bad guys. Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Well, I think they're going to be
we like these other Avengers soon.
I think we'll get like a little story for them. I'm sure it's going to be, we got to save our universe instead of your universe by destroying your universe or something. But there's a shorthand there, right? When we see Chris Evans in a Hydra cap uniform or whatever it is, where we get it.
But if that's what it is, it's a misunderstanding of what was good about Secret Wars.
Yeah.
Like the whole thing about Secret Wars, it was like, whoa, these guys, they're being forced to fight, but they like each other. It's not good versions and evil versions of characters we all like. It's sort of perhaps a mistake.
The problem, I think, to the point that all the game is making here, and obviously we haven't seen the movie, we don't know the plot, we don't know what's going to happen. Maybe it'll be great. That would be awesome. But it takes the focus off of the rest of the MCU, which has been the consistent problem since the end of Avengers Endgame. Is nobody else has gotten enough time in the spotlight.
To be awesome.
Yeah, to be awesome. And there's plenty we like. We enjoy the actors. We enjoy the actresses. But we just haven't seen them enough. But I guess we'll see. Let's see. The Big says, amazing Greg Pak interview. Thank you. On a different note, can you recommend a trade paperback for a gift for a non-superhero fan? I was thinking The Many Deaths of Layla Starr. Is there anything else that comes to mind?
I mean, that's a great one. To shout out another, the follow-up to Many Deaths of Layla Starr, Rare Flavors is very good as well.
Rare Flavors is good.
Yeah, that's a good
But
call.
I do think Many Deaths is better than that.
Yeah, I think, it always comes back to it depends on the person. Like, as we always say, if you like horror, check out Lock and Key. If this person is into metaphysical stuff or like supernatural stuff, Many Deaths of Layla Starr is a great pick.
Fables is also good.
Fables is a good one, for sure. Let's see. Oop, I missed a couple there. Easy Reader says, are you guys playing Marvel Rivals that debuted? I did play that a little bit this weekend. It's fun.
Was that fun? What?
Well, so it's a PvP arena type thing where you take on different variants of Marvel characters and make them fight each other. So I played it through a couple of times and I was like, this is fun, but I don't like PvP stuff. I find it a little repetitive because it's just going into different arenas, fighting people, everybody's jumping around and shooting each other. I don't know. I prefer a game with a story. That's all. But
pivoting slightly off this, my wife's cousin, we were away for Thanksgiving, was like, you ever played Marvel Snap? I'm heavily addicted to it. You have to play.
Oh,
did you play
That's
it?
a setup.
I literally.
That's
he
like
explained it to me.
up, dude.
He explained it to me for like 45 minutes.
Yeah.
That's too much. Man. No, just hand somebody a phone and play it because like it is very fun, but do not explain Marvel Snap.
No, I watched. He was like this. So then you do this. You do this, and he then sent me like you have to play so I can to show you how I just got to this.
So I can
level.
kick your butt.
Basically. Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe I'll get into that and ruin my life.
Yeah. Wow. It sounds like it was a threat.
Nat Townsend says, forgive me if I've already asked this, but what are some of your favorite comics for the winter holiday season?
Yeah, he's already asked this.
That's not true. I mean, what do you like in a winter comic? A holiday season? You want something cozy? Something to buckle in with?
I don't know. I'm picturing like a Tim Sale. I always like his art. Makes me feel cozy, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a great answer. I'm just reading Sunday, the graphic novel that has been sort of going around. That came out in October. That's been nice.
I don't think this is coming out on time. I think this is coming out next year, but it's top of mind because I saw they're doing a new printing of Wednesday Comics, the DC project that was like a big newsprint thing. And that definitely says to me, like, grab a cup of hot cocoa, read the newspaper. Wednesday Comics was great. So I'm excited to pick that up when that comes out.
I would throw out Bone as well as a great sort of cozy read.
I mean, if we're going to go to our go-tos, Jesus.
I haven't said the word Bone on this podcast in quite some time.
Stanley says, any fun plans for New Orleans? Will you all take the train there? No, I believe we're all flying on an aeroplane.
No, I thought we were racing in
airplane. We were like, oh my God, I'm really worried about my flight.
I thought we were all racing in go-karts from the East Coast.
Mario Karts.
No, instead we chose we were like, let's book tickets on an airline that's going out of business. And we did that.
We did that.
Yeah, that'll be great. Maybe we'll make it to New Orleans, maybe not. But for anybody, I didn't plug at the beginning, so I do want to mention it's going to be Friday, January 10th at 8 p.m. at
Come on down to New Orleans. Let's hang out.
And I'll mention we do have a special guest on the show, Gavin Greedry, the artist of Superman 78. And also, I should have written this down, but he has a project from Goats Flying Press that's like this grindhouse graphic novel thing that I'm super excited to check out. It seems very fun.
Intense.
So he'll be there as well as the drinks and stuff. And then we're going to have a panel on Saturday as well at 4 p.m. at Fan Expo New Orleans. Justin, go ahead.
And that's all fun, but we're also going to be hanging out. Brew Carré, boozing. That's where one of our performances is. And we're going to be bouncing around. So if you're actually down there and want to pick a spot, I've been down there a ton of times. We're going to be down. We're going to be eating a lot of random food. We're going to be getting some iced coffee. Beignets, that's sucker food. We're going to get some legit food out there. We're going to be hanging on the Bywater a little bit. We're going to be drinking some frozen Irish coffees. We're going to be doing it all up.
What?
We have a potentially related question from Stray Bullet here. It says, what is your favorite burger? If you had to eat one burger forever, what would be your favorite? Smash burgers are not allowed, but something like mushroom Swiss, bacon cheddar barbecue.
Oh, man.
Well, great question. And my answer is always, it's a blue cheeseburger. I don't want the bacon on it. I don't need the bacon on it. That's gilding the lily. It's just a thick, nothing smash, a thick burger.
Yeah.
Really medium
Corner
rare to
Bistro
rare.
is my favorite burger, where it's like a fist. It's just a giant slab of meat.
And just like you're saying, like the basic one, like lettuce, tomato, cheese, burger. That's it, Pete.
Well, I mean, my favorite fast food burger is a rodeo cheeseburger because it's got the onion rings, barbecue sauce. But yeah. I mean, I haven't met a burger I don't like, so. Whatever you're into, I'm going to try it. You know what I mean? So,
and let me shout out something from the mid-aughts in Brooklyn, if anybody have this. A Schnock burger. Alex, maybe?
No, I don't think so.
Schnock was this place that was in Carroll Gardens, Red Hook area. And around, they had a couple other outposts, but they did sort of mini burger sliders. Mm-hmm. Burger, big hunk of cheddar that was cooked down, and they had two sauces they would put on every burger, like a vinegar-based sauce, and then the schnock sauce was a sort of a Russian dressing type sauce, and man, they were the best. I would order them by the tray when we would have
Good for you.
My favorite, there was a place called Island Burger, which was on 9th Avenue and 48th, 49th, something like that.
Yes, dude.
They had a burger. You're going to hate this, Justin, based on what you said, but it was like I don't know, I thought it was called the Triple B, but I think it was like Quadruple B. It was blackened because they put like blackened spices burger on the outside, bacon, blue cheese, and barbecue sauce, and it was
wow,
really good. I think
what a taste explosion!
Oh, so good. Nat Townsend, who has clearly not been listening to the show, says, what's the date of the New Orleans show? We just said this, Nat, but I'll say it again. Friday, January 10th, 8 p.m. at Brew Carré. Please come.
It will be down there that whole weekend, 10th.
Yeah, Nat, come on down, dude. I'll punch you. It'll be great. Come on, man.
Guest on the show, Nat. Let's go.
Don't offer him that. He'll take us up on it. Bad Guys on Twitch says, Frank Miller's recent cover work. Have you seen S Show? Legend evolves, devolves. For the record, I dig it, even if it's not good. I would say...
Good question.
I think that's my take as well, is that I think, like, it's clearly a very different style. He's clearly not had the precise line work that he has back in the day, but... they're very dynamic covers when they work, honestly. Like, I'm going to mangle this quote. This would be very much just, I don't know, whatever. But Rob Liefeld, who probably knows a thing or two from...
Don't you dare mangle a Rob Liefeld quote. Let him do it.
Yeah. But he put up this long blog post, which had the like regular things in it where he talked about like, he's a legend. How dare you? He's done so much work, et cetera, et cetera. And that's all fine and good, but that doesn't necessarily excuse like a bad cover. What he said, he used the word rough, but he also laid out, this is the style that he has been moving towards for years, very specifically, going all the way back to like Dark Knight Returns 2, Sin City. And I think, frankly, like, you could see, yes, you could see the progression there. Like, I don't know if it's purposeful or degrading of style, but it's not like he's turning in garbage. He is... Yeah.
Well, I think you covered this really well in Comic Book Club News, I thought, Alex.
Thanks.
Where you sort of explained it, but like in a really nice way. And I think it's accurate. Like, to everyone's being like, he's losing his touch. I'm like, he's drawing this thing. Like, he wants to draw how he wants to draw it. It's not like he's like a broken man doing this. Like, he is someone who like is in control of his art and he wants to do it this way. I think you can see, like Rob Liefeld saying, not to agree with him too hard, but you can see a progression there, and it makes sense that he's landing where he's landing.
And sorry, one last thing that I'd say is I'd highly encourage anybody, this is not to throw the colorists under the bus, but anybody who saw the Marvel covers are like, this is garbage, try to find it in the pen and pencil version, because I think the black and whites are insanely better than when they're colored. There's something about it that just flattens the whole thing out.
Well, and like I think Nat Townsend saying in the comments, I like his new covers. They're weird. They are weird. And I appreciate strange covers more than just like showing us a scene that may or may not be in the comic. I'm like, I don't need that. I'm going to read the comic anyway. You don't need to sell me. I want to see something.
Don't start with your covers bullshit tirade. You know, like, you don't even look at
You're
it.
the
cover
one.
means nothing to you.
You're the one with the tirade, bro.
Yeah.
Justin, and we know this is true, goes into a comic book shop and just rips every cover off.
He doesn't care
It's
about
not
covers.
interesting.
Covers
I'm
are important.
Thanks.
My brother's colorblind. I'm colorblind, and it's always that's just a genetic thing.
Well, that's quite lovely.
All right, why don't we wrap up audience questions there and move on to our next section, which is trivia. And for that, we're going to turn it over to Pete LePage.
All right, this is the part we give back to you, the lovely audience. It's an opportunity to win $25 free in the form of a gift card to Midtown Comics Online. Because if you had $25, you'd want to go to a comic book shop. You know what I mean? So yeah, all we need is a first hand up or a me. I saw Nat was talking earlier, but maybe he backed off. I don't know what his cooking situation
maybe he's
is.
nervous because we said his name too many times.
No, but maybe he's like in the middle of a crucial moment.
We got bad guys. Bad guys.
All right, bad guys is in.
All right, original Billie Eilish fan over there. Right.
All right. Today's trivia is about the impressive comic book one-shot Doom and a small nod to the legend Jonathan Hayes, R.I.P. Seymour. All right, please listen to all three options before making your selection. Here we go. Question number 1. Who is the artist on this epic one-shot? Is it A, Sanford Green, B, great, you got your Levi's on, you're yelling at the moon, C, Gene Howell?
Ooh, wow. Before you were even done, we got an A.
Bad guys. I mean, Twitch, I always think Twitch is ahead of us.
Yeah,
like, Twitch knows what we're going to say.
I tell you guys,
It's
Twitch
very
is the
weird.
future.
Yeah,
Every
Twitch is
time
the future.
Twitch is, we get someone on Twitch, they're definitely.
All right, question number 2. Who is the writer on this epic one-shot? Is it A, Jonathan Hickman, B, bro, did you invent Morse code just to tell me you've been robbed? C, Robin Morse?
It's A, says bad guys.
Yeah, it is. Here we go,
Bad
last one. Question number 3. For the second printing, Sanford Green did a wraparound blank. Is it A, variant, B, Richard, stop cornering people, C, Dick Pinner?
Oh, wow. I have so many things to say about that. A wraparound blank was your question?
Yep.
What other wraparounds do you think? Like a scarf?
Ooh,
Like
could
a
be.
neck wraparound?
There's nothing like a nice...
Bad guy says I can only type A so many times in here.
Yeah, it only lets
Is
you.
bad guys a code breaker? Is bad guys some sort of genius who can read?
Was that correct? Was it A, Pete?
It is correct, yes.
Congratulations to Bad Guys. You have won a
Yes.
$25 gift card to Midtown Comics. Shoot us an email and we'll get that off to you. And Pete, what is the secret movie you are referring to?
Well, of course, I'm talking about the 1954 classic, The Fast and the Furious.
What?
Huh.
Yep.
Great.
That's right.
So, why don't we wrap up here on that weird, confusing note?
Look, here's the thing. We can't fact check Pete. What he's saying might be true. It might not be true. We will never know. He could say literally anything. He'd be like, that 2030 movie, me and the nonsense. And we're like, okay. Okay.
Whatever. I don't know.
Dude, that sounds like a
Beaten
great
into
pitch.
submission by these past 5 minutes. Do whatever you want. The new comics come out tomorrow. We're very excited about them. We haven't read any of them yet.
We haven't read them yet.
We don't touch him.
What are you looking forward to that's coming out, Pete?
I'm looking forward to Batman and Robin number 16. Also, Batman Dark Patterns number 1, as well as Laura Kinney, The Wolverine number 1, and FML number 2.
Do you know what that stands for, Pete, though? Because careful, you might not like it as much.
I know what it stands for.
Friends we love.
Friends me love. Friends me love. I'll list them. Daniel Cabral. Joshua W. Broxson. That's what we do at the beginning. Alex, the comics I'm looking forward to.
Yes, Justin. Yes,
if
please.
I may take the
No,
gauntlet.
jump in here.
Let
I
me
would love
take
to hear.
the conch, please. I want to shout out Storm number 3. This Storm series has been sort of a sneaky, amazing addition to the X-Men reboot of late. Really enjoying that. Looking forward to reading where that's going. And then, we got an Uncanny X-Men issue coming out. It's tied up in the crossover, so we'll see what that's all about. But I am excited for that. And let me also say Superwoman Special number 1. We've been getting a lot of cases where the partners of superheroes have been given superpowers, and it's happening again. So looking forward to see how we define Lois Lane in the DC universe.
You mentioned a bunch of the stuff that I was going to mention, but I'll shout out Ultimate Universe 1 year in number 1 coming out from Marvel, which seems like that's going to be a big issue.
My guy,
Not only Dennis Camp writing Ultimate Nick Fury, but also Chris Condon and Alessandro Capuccio coming in on a little tease of Ultimate Wolverine. That should be interesting. Also, From the World of Minor Threats, The Brood, number 1 coming out from Dark Horse Comics. Always love what they're doing in the Minor Threats universe, so excited about that. And the last one, not to be a Pete, but based on the covers alone, In Bloom, number 1 looks gross and weird, and that's my jam, man. And all of those books are going to be in our Stack podcast that posts Wednesday, 9 a.m. in the Stack feed and in the Comic Book Club feed. And folks, that is it for this week's show. Bunch of people we want to thank. We want to thank CRC Payne for coming on to talk about Batman Wayne Family Adventures. You can check that out on Webtoon. Daniel Doc Holliday Kibblesmith for coming to talk about the Powerpuff Girls Winter Snowdown Showdown, Darkwing Duck, and of course, tuberculosis awareness. And Greg Pak for coming on to talk about 20 years in comics, as well as tease Sam Wilson, Captain America. Sam Wilson, Captain America, coming out on January 1st. Check that out from Marvel. Next week, our final live show of the year because of holidays. Ed Bryson is going to be here to talk about Silverhawks, and Neil Clyde is going to be back on the show to talk about Kings and Canvas. You can check out Comic Book Club News, our daily news podcast, patreon.com/Comic Book Club to support the show and all the shows we do. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple, Android, Spotify, or the app of your choice. Comic Book Club on Blue Sky, Comic Book Club Live on Instagram, TikTok, and Threads. ComicBookClubLive.com for this podcast and many more. Until next time, we'll see you at the Comic Book Club.
Good night, folks. What a chat.
Take care of yourself out there.
Thanks, everybody.
What a kick in the pants.
What a kick in the pants. All right, good night, everybody.